Welcome to Beautiful Thrift Homemaking. I'm Linda, and my first project for this channel is to read through a vintage cookbook from 1917. It is called A Thousand Ways to Please a Husband, and I have a reprint here from Dover Publications that I'm reading from. We're covering the lives of a newlywed couple, Bob and Bettina, and Bettina shares her recipes, and each chapter has a little storyline, and then it's followed by a menu and the recipes for the food items in the menu. We're starting the month of February right now with a little poem. Cold and snowy February does seem slow and trying, very. Still, a month made gay by Cupid never could be wholly stupid. And we have a little picture. And you'll notice that Bettina has on an apron and a baking cap. Again, this is 1917. Chapter 110. If you want to start at the beginning with chapter 1, that took place when I began recording back in June, and it's February now. All right. A steamed pudding. This was a splendid dinner, Bettina, said Ruth, as the two of them were carrying the dishes into the kitchen, and Fred and Bob were deep in conversation in the living room. Such a delicious dessert. Suet pudding, wasn't it? I couldn't guess all that was in it. Just a steamed fig pudding, Ruth. The simplest thing in the world. Simple? But don't you have to use a steamer to make it in? And isn't that awfully complicated? I've always imagined so. You don't need to use a steamer at all. I steamed this in my fireless cooker, in a large baking powder can. I filled the buttered can about 2/3 full and set it in boiling water that came less than halfway up the side of the can. Of course, the cover of the can or the mold must be screwed on tight, and the utensil in which it is steamed must be covered. I used one of the utensils that fit in the fireless, of course, and I brought the water to a boil on the stove so that I was sure it was boiling vigorously when I set it in the cooker on the sorry, this is a word that is different to us. It's Sizzlinz. Okay, so I'm sure you'll pardon me for not being able to pronounce that right away. So the word after that is hot stone. So this is a special hot stone that goes into this fireless cooking, and we'll talk about that afterwards. But let me move on. When I set it in the cooker on the Sizzlinz hot stone, you see it is very simple. In fact, I think steaming anything is very easy, for you don't have to keep watching it as you would if it were baking in the oven and basting it or changing the heat. We haven't a cooker, you know. Could I make a steamed pudding that same way in on the stove? Yes, indeed, the very same way. Just set the buttered can filled 2/3 full in a larger covered utensil holding boiling water. Keep the water boiling all the time. I shall certainly try it tomorrow, Bettina. For dinner that night, Bettina served breaded veal, creamed potatoes, browned sauce, spinach with hard-cooked eggs, bread, butter, spiced peaches, fig pudding, foamy sauce, and coffee. And in this chapter, we have the recipes for the breaded veal, the browned gravy, Bettina's steamed fig pudding, and the foamy sauce to go on top of the pudding. All right, so my habit is to discuss the chapters after I read them. So I usually read 2 chapters per episode. This time, though, I'm going to read 4 chapters, and then we'll discuss them and look at the recipes. Chapter 111, on Valentine's Day. So here we are on Valentine's Day. Bob, the flowers are lovely, said Bettina, looking again at the brilliant tulips on the dinner table. They make this a real Valentine dinner, although there is nothing festive about it. I had intended to plan something special, but I went to a Valentine luncheon at Mary's and stayed so late. A Valentine luncheon? With red hearts everywhere, I suppose. Yes, everything heart-shaped, and in red too, as far as possible. Mary had 12 guests at one large round table. Of course, there were strings and strings of red hearts of various sizes decorating the table. Not a very new idea, of course, but so effective. And everything tasted so good. Cream of tomato soup, the best stuffed tenderloin with mushroom sauce. I must find out how that is made. And the best sweet potato croquettes. Sweet potato croquettes? That's a new one on me. I'll have to try them sometime soon. And Mary had peas in heart-shaped baking powdered biscuits. The cunningest you ever saw. Heart-shaped date bread sandwiches with her salad, and heart-shaped ice cream with individual heart cakes. That was Valentine's Day with a vengeance, wasn't it? Yes, but it was lovely, Bob. That night, Bettina served broiled steak, baked potatoes, macaroni with tomatoes and green peppers, bread, butter, cornstarch fruit pudding, cherry sauce, and coffee. And in this chapter, we have Bettina's recipes for the macaroni, tomatoes, and green peppers, the cornstarch fruit pudding, and the cherry sauce. Chapter 112, Ruth gives a dinner for 4. Bettina and Bob arrived at 6:30, as Ruth had requested. She wouldn't let me come earlier, Bob, explained Bettina as they rang the bell. I wanted to help her, you know, but she said her father and mother were out of town, and Fred was to be the only guest besides ourselves, so she was sure that she could manage alone. There she is now. But it was not Ruth after all. Why, Fred, hello, said Bob. Did you come early to assist the cook? I did, said Fred, but she informed me at once that she wanted no inexperienced help around. So I've been sitting in the living room alone for the last half hour. She did say that I might answer the bell, but as for doing anything else, well, she was positively rude. And Fred raised his voice so that its penetrating tones would reach the kitchen. The worst of it all is that I've been hungry as well as lonesome. I might endure sitting alone in the living room if I hadn't gone without lunch today, in anticipation of this banquet. And now, shame on you, Fred, interrupted Ruth, coming in with flushed cheeks above her dainty white apron. Did he receive you properly? I leave it to you, Bettina, to say that. I've received harsh treatment. Here, I went and purchased 4 good seats for the Duchess Theater tonight. You did, Fred? Cried Ruth. Why, you dear boy. For that, I'll see that you are certainly fed well. Dinner is ready, people. Will you walk into the dining room? Ruth's dinner consisted of figs in blankets, candied sweet potatoes, escalloped eggplant, bread butter, date pudding, cream. And here we have Bettina's recipes for pigs in blankets, candied sweet potatoes, scalloped eggplant, and date pudding. All right. So that's chapters 110, 111, 112, and we will do 113. Looking over at my notes because I think that 113 goes with 112, so I do need to do this extra. Alice practices economy. Oh, Bettina, said Alice delightedly as she opened the door. I'm so glad to see you. I've just been thinking about you. What do you suppose I'm doing? Getting dinner? That is what I must be doing very soon. I stopped in for only a minute on my way home. I am getting dinner, and I want to tell you that it is a very economical dinner, and it's going to be good, too. I thought and thought about your advice and decided to practice it. So I searched through all my cookbooks for the recipes I wanted and finally decided on this particular menu. But Bettina, now I can tell you the flaw in your system of economy. What is it? Harry doesn't like it? Goodness, no. Harry was delighted with the idea. My argument is this. It's going to take me an endless amount of time to plan economical meals that are also good, time that I ought to spend in polishing silver and making calls and sewing on buttons, and I don't believe it'll be as hard as you think, Alice dear, laughed Bettina. For instance, if this meal tonight is good and economical and Harry is pleased, don't forget the combination and write it down in a notebook. You can repeat the menu in 2 or 3 weeks, and you have no idea how soon you will collect the best combinations and ideas of economy. Tell me what you're having tonight. That night, Alice served baked eggs, potatoes scalloped with bacon, baking powder biscuits, butter, peach cup with peach sauce, and tea. And we have the recipes that Alice used for baked eggs, for potatoes scalloped with bacon, for a peach cup, and for the peach sauce. And so there we go. Chapter 114, A Company Dinner for Bob. Some dinner tonight, remarked Bob as he sat down at the table. Were you expecting company that didn't show up? No, indeed, laughed Bettina. I expected just you and nobody else. But maybe I did cook a little more than usual. You see, I was over at Alice's this afternoon, inspecting her list of next week's menus. You know, she is trying to economize, and she is really doing it. But in spite of economy, Harry is having elaborate meals. I do hope he appreciates it. Nearly all of her dinners are three-course affairs, most carefully planned to look like the real thing, as she calls an expensive dinner. I tell her hers are the real thing, only almost too elaborate. You see, she is trying to disguise her economy so that Harry won't miss the first meal she gave him. She makes me almost afraid that I'm not feeding you enough. No danger of that, said Bob emphatically. But what are all these economical things she is serving? Wait, I wrote some of them down. Listen, here is one. Peanut croquettes, olive sauce, Duchess potatoes, creamed beets, Parker House rolls, orange marmalade, pea and cheese salad, wafers, apricot ice, and sponge cake. How's that? And here's another. Creamed tuna, stuffed potatoes, mock eggplant, whole wheat muffins, grape jelly, Russian salad, fairy gingerbread, hard sauce. Well, said Bob, they sound good, but not so good as the dinners you give me. That evening, Bettina served scalloped salmon, baked potatoes, creamed cabbage, egg rolls, currant jelly, chocolate kisses, and coffee. And we have her recipes for the scalloped salmon, the egg rolls, and for the top of the egg rolls and the chocolate kisses. Okay, so join me in a second and we will discuss these chapters. That's chapters 110 through 114. So quite a few chapters to discuss for our beginning of February. Okay, let's discuss our chapters. Chapter 110 is steamed pudding. We do have the word suet in here, and that is some animal fat. It's not the generalized fat in the cow or the lamb, but it's the fat that comes around some of the internal organs, such as the kidneys. So it's especially fine type of animal fat. So the steamed pudding, then Ruth and Fred are over for dinner. And they're an engaged couple, by the way, if you missed the earlier chapters. They're going to be building a house and moving into it as soon as they get married, probably in the summertime coming up. The steamed fig pudding is using the fireless cooker. And in chapter 7 of my readings, I talked about the fireless cooker in to some extent. That was sort of what predates our crock pot or our instant pot or our slow cookers today. It was kind of also called a hay box. It was an insulated container, also kind of like what we would think of as a little ice chest. And there were discs that were kind of like stone discs that you would preheat and place into the insulated container called the fireless cooker, and then you would seal it up, and with the food inside there in a container, then the food would would continue to slow cook for hours. And so that's how she made her pudding inside of the fireless cooker. And we'll talk about figs just a little bit, and just especially dried figs are very high in fiber, calcium, and potassium. You can look that up online and find that info like I did. So I was thinking about figs, and I love fig trees. They're such lovely, lovely trees. We've tried to plant them on our property, and the gophers just they love the young roots of the beginning fig trees. So we have not been successful getting a fig tree started for ourselves. Now, I do have another picture that I didn't show right here, and I'll try to put that up. Let me see if I'm putting it up there. So what we have is Bettina with her tea cart, and she's serving the men in the living room off the tea cart. So I think that that is probably probably a picture that goes with the other chapter, but it is shown at this chapter, so I'll show it again, and you can kind of focus in on that tea cart and Bettina, how she's dressed, and the men, of course, in their dapper looking suits, as the people were a little bit more formal back then. All right, so let's look at the recipes. We have breaded veal. For 4 portions is 1 pound of veal round steak, cut 1/2 an inch thick, 1 tablespoon of egg, either the white or the yolk, 1 tablespoon of water, 2/3 a cup of cracker crumbs or dry bread crumbs, 2 tablespoons of lard, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of butter, 1/8 a teaspoon of paprika. Wipe the meat with a damp cloth and cut into 4 pieces. Mix the egg, water, salt, and paprika, and dip each piece of meat into the egg mixture. Roll in the crumbs and pat the crumbs into the meat. Place the lard in the frying pan, and when hot, add the meat. Brown well on one side, and then turn, allowing the other side to become the same even color. Lower the flame under the meat and cook 30 minutes, keeping the pan covered. When the meat has cooked 25 minutes, add the butter to lend flavor to the lard. And now the browned gravy should go on top of that veal. 1 tablespoon of butter, 2 tablespoons of flour, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1/2 cup water, and 1/4 cup milk. Remove the breaded veal from the pan and place on a hot platter. Keep in a warm place. Loosen all the small pieces of crackers and meat, if there are any, from the bottom of the pan. If there is no fat left, add butter. Allow the fat to get hot and add flour and salt. Mix well with the heated fat and allow to brown. Stir constantly and add the water. Mix well and add 1/4 cup of milk. Allow to cook 1 minute, stirring constantly. If a thinner sauce is desired, add another 1/4 of a cup of milk. If a thicker sauce is desired, allow to cook for 2 minutes. Okay, so that's the gravy. That will give some moisture and flavor, extra flavor to that veal. Bettina's steamed fig pudding for 4 portions is made with 1 cup flour, 1/2 teaspoon soda, 1/2 teaspoon ginger, 2/3 teaspoon cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon nutmeg, 1/2 cup molasses, 1/2 cup milk, 1/2 cup suet chopped fine, 1/3 cup figs, 1/3 cup stoned raisins, which means that back then raisins were not seedless. So we buy our raisins seedless now. I don't even think you could find raisins with seeds in them if you tried. So 1/3 of a cup of raisins and 1/4 a teaspoon lemon extract. Mix the flour, soda, ginger, cinnamon, nutmeg, and suet. Add the figs, raisins, molasses, and milk and stir well. Add the lemon extract. Fill a well-buttered pudding mold 2/3 full. Steam an hour and a half with the water boiling. Serve hot with foamy sauce. Foamy sauce, it's Foamy, foamy sauce, for 4 portions is made with 1 egg, half a cup of sugar, 1/4 a cup of hot water, 1 tablespoon lemon juice or 1 teaspoon of lemon extract. Beat the egg vigorously, then add the sugar and mix well. Add the hot water and stir vigorously. Add the lemon juice. Serve. This sauce may be reheated if desired. Okay. So what do you think about that menu? It's a little bit different in my experiences. Okay, chapter 111 on Valentine's Day. I have a few things to talk about. Tulips on the table. Here we are again with some decoration on the table. And you'll remember, if you were with me from the beginning, that many of the earlier chapters really emphasized making centerpieces, using fresh flowers or branches from the yard and so forth to make centerpieces for your table. And so that was a very common theme quite a while through the beginning of the book. So now here we revisit that with Tulips on the Table for Valentine's Day, a gift from Bob. And then we had Bettina going to a luncheon at Mary's, and there were 12 people at that luncheon sitting around a round table, and the theme was red foods and red hearts. And the foods in the heart shape were included the baking powder biscuits and the date bread sandwiches and even the ice cream and cake. All right. And I was thinking about foods that are red, and I made myself a list. Just in case sometime you want to do a red themed meal or luncheon or party or something. So we have cherries and cherry pie. Anything with tomatoes, tomato soup, salsa, red chili peppers, red bell peppers, some fruits such as strawberries, raspberries, red apple, watermelon, red grapes, cranberries, pomegranate, and some jam that's made from those fruits, so plum jam, strawberry jam, and so forth. Then we have some vegetables that are red, radish, is red on the outside, generally. Beets, red onions, red potatoes, and red cabbage. And then we also have like hibiscus and red velvet cake. And did you know that red velvet cake is not a white cake with red coloring in it? It's a little different because it has some cocoa in it and buttermilk. And the combination of the cocoa and the buttermilk give the flavor, the specialized flavor to a red velvet cake, in addition to the probably terrible for you red coloring. So there's red velvet cake with a delicious cream cheese frosting usually. And then red licorice, of course, is a red candy. But red licorice is not real licorice. It's really just a raspberry kind of flavored candy with the same texture as black licorice. Because black licorice actually has a licorice root in it. So black licorice is the real thing. And what they call red licorice is not actually licorice. Then you can make sugar cookies, and you can make them red or decorate them with red toppings. And then pancakes and waffles can be also, just like the biscuits, can be cooked in a cookie cutter shape, a cookie cutter heart, or just poured freehand as a heart shape. And then, yep, so those are some of the red ideas that I had. Now for this menu that Bettina served for Bob, we have the macaroni, tomatoes, and green peppers, and that's just for 3 portions. 1/3 cup of macaroni, 3 cups of water, and a teaspoon of salt. 1 cup of canned tomatoes, 3 tablespoons of chopped green pepper, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. 1/4 teaspoon celery salt, 1/8 teaspoon of onion salt, 3 tablespoons of cheese cut fine, 2/3 cup of meat stock or milk, 1/4 cup of crumbs, and a tablespoon of butter. Boil the water, add the salt, add the macaroni cut in small pieces. So macaroni back then maybe did not come as elbow macaroni in the small pieces or as little tubes, but instead long tubes that you would have to cut or break. Boil until tender, about 15 minutes, and drain. Butter a baking dish. Add a layer of macaroni, a layer of tomatoes, and some green pepper. Sprinkle with salt, celery, and onion salt. Add the cheese and continue with the layers until the dish is full. If available, use meat stock. If not, milk. Pour the liquid over the mixture. Melt the butter, add the crumbs, and place on the top of the food. Place the dish in a moderate oven and allow to bake 25 minutes or until brown. All right. Now, that's kind of an enhanced macaroni and cheese, and not very cheesy at all. But now we have a cornstarch fruit pudding. For 3 portions is a half a cup of water and a half a cup of cherry juice. 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. 1/8 a teaspoon of salt, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 1 egg yolk, and 1 egg white. Mix thoroughly the cornstarch, sugar, and salt. Gradually add the cold water and then the juice. Cook over hot water until the mixture becomes quite thick. Add the egg yolk. Mix well, cool slightly, and add the egg white stiffly beaten. Pour into a well-moistened custard mold. Allow to stand for half an hour or more and serve with cherry sauce. I will say that a lot of the recipes from this book from 1917 involved baking things in a mold of some sort. So there were a lot of different molds for different purposes that she had. The cherry sauce for 3 portions is made with a half a cup of cherry juice, half a cup of water, 1 tablespoon of flour, 1/2 a teaspoon of lemon extract, 1/8 teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and 1/4 a cup of cherries cut fine. Mix the flour, salt, and sugar. Add slowly the cherry juice and water. Cook 2 minutes. Add the cherries and extract. Serve hot over the cold pudding. All right, now we're on to chapter 112. Ruth gives a dinner for 4. And here it's 6:30. The location is Ruth's parents' home because she's an engaged woman living with her parents still. Her parents are away and Fred has arrived, but he's just sitting in the living room getting hungry and lonesome while Ruth prepares the food. She didn't want any help. She's trying to learn her homemaking skills and get some practice in. Bettina has been coaching her. Ruth is wearing a dainty white apron. You know, clothing was more precious in this time and in need of protection, and laundry was harder to do. So aprons were a definite must in the kitchen. And they're going to go to the theater after dinner, the 4 of them. Pigs in a blanket are served. And this is not the typical, what my family would call pigs in a blanket. Pigs in a blanket is some kind of meat wrapped in dough. And in our family, pigs in the blanket only referred to pancakes with sausage links, and you would roll the pancake over the sausage link, and that was called pigs in a blanket. And that's the only kind I have known. But this is sort of a coastal specialty, and it's oysters wrapped in bacon and sauteed. So let me give you that recipe. 1 cup of oysters, 8 slices of thin bacon, 1/4 a teaspoon of salt, and 1/8 a teaspoon of paprika. Remove the rind from long, thin slices of bacon. Place 2 or more oysters upon each slice of bacon. Sprinkle the oysters with salt and pepper. Roll up, and pepper wasn't in the ingredients, but paprika was, so whichever. Roll up and tie with a white string. Saute in a hot frying pan until nicely browned. Garnish with parsley. So those are Bettina's pigs in a blanket in this menu. And then there were candied sweet potatoes, which actually sound really good. 6 large sweet potatoes, 1 cup of brown sugar, 1/2 a cup of water, 1 teaspoon salt, and 1 tablespoon butter. Wash the potatoes thoroughly. Cook in boiling water until tender when pierced with a knitting needle. We've seen that one other time in the book where a knitting needle is used to check doneness. Drain and peel when cool enough to handle. Cut in slices lengthwise, 3/4 of an inch thick. Make a syrup by boiling the sugar, butter, and water 5 minutes. Lay the potatoes in a pan, sprinkle with salt, and pour the syrup over them. Cook in a moderate oven until the potatoes are browned, basting frequently. And a moderate oven is usually 325 to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. All right. Then we have the eggplant dish. And she uses that technique that's often found where eggplant is sprinkled with salt to draw out the juice before using it in the food. So in this case, she uses a weight over it. So I'll read that recipe for you. Scalloped eggplant for 6 portions. So she's going to have some leftovers for this. 2 cups of cubed eggplant, 3 tablespoons of butter, 3 tablespoons of flour, half a teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and 1½ cups of milk. You'll see she makes kind of a white sauce to cook the eggplant in. Remove the skin from the eggplant and cut into slices 1/4 of an inch thick. Sprinkle the slices with salt. Pile one above the other and place a weight on the top to extract the juice. Allow to stand 1 hour. So you're going to need to think and plan ahead for this one. Wash off and cut into 1/4 of an inch cubes. Melt the butter, add the flour, salt, and pepper. Mix well, gradually add the milk and cook 2 minutes. Add the eggplant and pour the whole mixture into a buttered baking dish. Bake 30 minutes in a moderate oven. Now we have the final recipe in this chapter is the date pudding. And we've seen dates so often in this book. I have mentioned before how surprised I was about that. Didn't know that dates were so popular in 1917 on the East Coast. All right, so for date pudding, you have 1 cup of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/4 cup of sea sugar, which is light brown sugar, 10 dates cut fine, 1/8 teaspoon of salt, 1 egg, 1/3 cup of milk, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, and 3 tablespoons of melted butter. Mix the flour, baking powder, sea sugar, dates, and salt. Add the egg, milk, and vanilla. Stir vigorously and beat 1 minute. Add the melted butter. Bake 20 minutes in a moderate oven and serve hot with cream. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second because I need to make a phone call, and I'll be right back with you for our discussion of chapters 113 and 114 recipes. Thank you. All right, thank you for your patience. And chapter 113, Alice practices economy. Bettina is visiting her friend Alice, just walking by just before dinner time and checking in with Alice, her friend. Alice is concerned about how much time it's taking her to plan her menus. And she's trying especially to plan menus that are economical. But she is a society girl and she's used to very fine things. And being a newlywed, she wants to get her meals all figured out. And she has all her other household tasks to do. So she's wondering, oh, this is just so time consuming planning menus. So she wanted some tips and help from Bettina. And Bettina suggested that it'll be all right, that over time, but Alice will have collected a lot of menus that become favorites, and she can alternate them every couple weeks. So that was her advice. And the recipes that Alice used included the baked eggs for 2 portions. It was 2 eggs, 1/2 cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of soft bread crumbs, 1 tablespoon of butter, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/8 teaspoon of paprika. Butter 2 individual molds, 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 so tiny pans, and break an egg into each. Mix the salt and pepper in the milk and pour half of the mixture over each egg. Melt the butter and add the crumbs. Place the buttered crumbs on top of each egg. Bake in a moderate oven 20 minutes. Serve in the molds. And then we're going to have the scalloped potatoes with bacon and the peach cup and peach sauce. But I do have to pause again. Thank you. Okay, I'm back. And we're talking about the recipes From chapter 113, Alice Practices Economy. Potatoes scalloped with bacon. For 2 portions, 3 medium-sized potatoes, 3 slices of bacon, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/2 teaspoon paprika. You know what? I think that says 1/8 teaspoon of paprika, 2 tablespoons of flour, and 1 cup of milk. Broil the bacon, cut each piece in 3 parts, butter a casserole, and place in it a layer of peeled sliced potatoes. Sprinkle part of the flour, salt, and paprika over the potatoes and add 3 pieces of bacon. Continue in this manner until the dish is filled. Pour the milk over the contents and bake 40 minutes in a moderate oven. So 350 degrees probably. All right, so that sounds tasty. Now we have the peach cup, again 2 portions. It's kind of nice to see desserts in such small portions because that way we're not tempted to overeat on them. So for that peach cup dessert, we're going to have 4 halves of canned peaches sweetened, 1 tablespoon of egg, 3 tablespoons of milk, 2/3 a cup of flour, 1½ teaspoon baking powder, 1/8 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon of melted butter, 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, and 2 tablespoons of sugar. Mash 2 peach halves. So of the 4 peach halves, you're going to mash 2 of them. Mash 2 peach halves, then add the egg, milk, vanilla, melted butter, flour, baking powder, and salt, and mix thoroughly. Place a tablespoon of this mixture in the bottom of a well-buttered baking cup. Add a peach half and cover with the batter. Sprinkle 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar on the top and bake 20 minutes in a moderate oven. Turn from the cups and serve hot with peach sauce. Okay, so you're going to repeat that for 2 different baking containers. All right, peach sauce is going to be on top. And that again is for 2 portions. 2/3 a cup of peach juice, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, 1 tablespoon flour, 1/2 teaspoon of butter, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Mix 1 tablespoon of the peach juice with the flour. Gradually add the rest of the peach and lemon juice. Add the salt. Cook 1 minute. Add the butter. Serve hot. Very nice. Okay. So now we're going to go on to A Company Dinner for Bob, chapter 114. And for this one, we have some interesting desserts. I was going to tell you that just Bob and Bettina are eating together, and Bettina is sharing some of Alice's menu plans with Bob. Of course, he's not that interested, right? He just wants to eat what Bettina's going to make for him. He likes what she makes for him. We're going to have egg rolls, which are not Chinese food. It's going to be something else. And we're going to have chocolate kisses, which again, it's not Hershey's Kisses. It's something else. So let's take a look at that. But we'll start with the scalloped salmon. So for 2 portions, you're going to use 2/3 a cup of flaked salmon, 1 tablespoon of butter, 1 tablespoon of flour, 2/3 a cup of milk, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1/4 teaspoon paprika, 1 hard-cooked egg, 1 teaspoon lemon juice, 3 tablespoons chopped sour pickle, as opposed to a sweet pickle. I guess kind of like a dill then in that case. 1/2 a teaspoon minced parsley, 4 tablespoons of cracker crumbs, and 1 tablespoon of butter. Melt the butter, add the flour, and mix well. Add the milk and cook 1 minute. Add the salmon, salt, paprika, egg, diced lemon juice, pickle, and parsley. Mix thoroughly with a silver fork, being careful not to let the mixture get pasty. Pour into a well-buttered baking dish, melt the butter, and add the crumbs. Place buttered crumbs on the top. Bake 25 minutes in a moderate oven. All right. Now the egg rolls. Here we go for 2 portions. It's going to be made with 1½ cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of lard, 1 teaspoon of egg, and 1/3 cup of milk. It's very small. I'm looking at it. It's a 1/2 cup of milk. 1/2 cup of milk. Sorry about that. And then on the top, you're going to use a tablespoon of milk and a teaspoon of sugar. Okay, so the directions for these egg rolls are to mix and sift the flour, baking powder, and salt. Cut in the fat with a knife. Add the egg and milk using a knife to make a soft dough. Toss onto a floured board. Roll out to a thickness of 1/4 an inch. Cut out with a round cookie cutter 3 inches in diameter. Brush over with milk. Fold over like pocketbook rolls. Place in a tin pan and brush over the top with 1 tablespoon of milk, to which has been added 1 teaspoon of sugar. Bake in a moderate oven for 20 minutes. All right, so this recipe called egg rolls is really basically a rolled biscuit that has also been folded. Now, chocolate kisses. 14 kisses are made with 1 cup powdered sugar, 2 egg whites, 1 cup fine breadcrumbs, 2 ounces melted chocolate, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1 teaspoon vanilla, and 1 teaspoon baking powder. Beat the egg whites very stiffly. Add very carefully the powdered sugar. Cut and fold in the breadcrumbs and the baking powder. Add the chocolate, cinnamon, and vanilla. Drop the mixture from the tip of a spoon 2 inches apart upon a well-greased pan. Bake in a moderate oven 12 to 15 minutes. Okay, so here we have another recipe. We've seen one before, at least one before, that is a baked good that has breadcrumbs in it. I remember trying one of those recipes quite a while back. So this is another, and it looks like they're going to be kind of like a drop cookie. All right, so that is the end of our readings for today. We've covered quite a few chapters, more than usual, chapters 110 through 114. Thank you for joining me, and hopefully it's been informative and interesting to you. I usually only do 2 chapters each episode, so I'm sorry that this one is particularly long. I did have a lot of things delaying me getting posted, so I thought I better kind of get caught up. So thank you again for your patience, and have a blessed day, and happy homemaking.